Good morning. My name is Patrick Allen. Well, really it's good afternoon because it's afternoon on June the 12th, 2024. And my name is Patrick Allen, and I'm an interviewer for the Veterans History Project being conducted by the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. It's being done in the Cincinnati, Ohio area through the auspices of the Cincinnati-Hamilton County Public Library under the direction of Brian Powers. And we have with us today our cameraman, Tom Lee, who has a family with a very important and dignified military career. And also with us is director here at Ohio Living Cape May, where we're doing this interview, Tom Dreher. We had the privilege today of interviewing Vietnam-era veteran Paul Douglas Campbell. Mr. Campbell, thank you for this interview.
Thank you.
I understand you go by Doug.
I go by Doug.
You go by Doug. Well, before we get into your military background, let's talk about your family. And when were you born and where?
I was born in New Albany, Indiana. Christmas Eve, 1947.
Oh, great Christmas present for your parents.
Mom really wanted a new coat.
What was your mom and dad's name?
Oh, Robert J. and Campbell and Alberta Graff Campbell.
Do you know when your dad was born, how old was he?
He was born 13th of May, 1919. Mom was 24 June of 17.
Okay. Did they ever tell you how they met?
Yeah, they met at, there was a canteen in town, and this was before Dad was in the service, but he was one of the musicians that was playing at the dances there. That's where they met.
Was that in New Albany?
In New Albany, yeah.
Okay. What did your dad do? What was his occupation?
Well, he was an entertainer and an educator. My grandfather and my dad and two uncles had a quartet. They played the Lowe's circuit in vaudeville and other gigs around, but grandfather also had a print shop, and they all worked in those trades. And then later on, Dad was in, we came to Dayton area in 1948 when Governor Cox put WHIO TV on the air, and he needed a singing cowboy. And so Dad learned to play the guitar, and we moved to Dayton, and he also worked with University of Dayton to set up the broadcast school, and we flew in those years to Washington trying to get public broadcasting started.
So you were only a year or so old when you moved, so you had all of your education in the Dayton area? No.
We moved from Dayton in 1957, went to Manhattan, and Dad was hoping to break into the big time with CBS, but that didn't happen, and we moved back down home to New Albany, and then we lived in Elizabethtown, Kentucky. He got a job as program director at WSAC near Fort Knox. And then went back up to the Louisville area and lived in New Albany again. And then we moved to Lebanon with a project he had going there.
Lebanon, Ohio?
Lebanon, Ohio. That's where I started high school. And from there, built a radio station in Ashtabula and a second one in Willoughby, Ohio, up on the lake. After that, he was news director for WERE in Cleveland, and then he had a series of strokes and cardiac issues, and when he recovered from that, he taught at Cathedral Latin School in Cleveland.
That's a high school.
At the high school.
Now, before you moved to Manhattan, where'd you go to elementary school?
Well, I started out at Immaculate Conception there on Smithville Road in Dayton.
So did you finish grade school there before you went to Manhattan?
No.
You were still in grade school when you went to Manhattan?
When we went to New York, it's in a couple of different ones. PS 87, which is on the east side, and PS 69, which is right behind the New Amsterdam Theater, Ziegfeld's Theater.
Was that quite a different experience going from the small school you'd been in Dayton to PS schools in New York?
It was. That was a major shift. We had.
How far did you live from school there in New York?
Not too far. I'm trying to remember just exactly how far down Ziegfeld's was.
Was it walking distance? Was it walking?
Oh yeah, always walking distance. We were on West 56th Street, and so it was just a few blocks to Central Park and a few blocks to Carnegie Hall. Used to go over to the Bernstein Young People's concerts.
Okay. With all this traveling around from city to city, did your mother have any jobs outside the home?
Oh, every once in a while she would pick up something, but nothing until, much later. She was working as a hostess in a restaurant. That was mainly for fun.
Where did you spend most of your high school years? Or was it too varied?
First year at Lebanon, second year in Ashtabula, third year I started at Mentor, and then we moved into a house in Kirtland, Ohio. So the last year and a half I was at Kirtland.
Kirtland is a pretty historic area, isn't it?
Yeah, we lived right across the street from the first Mormon temple.
Okay. And did you graduate from Kirtland?
I did. That was the last graduation I went to.
And what year was that?
1966.
Now, while you were in any of these high schools, did you have any jobs anywhere after school or on weekends or vacations?
Yeah, I worked at the radio stations. I'd gotten my FCC license in '63, so I could run the board, and mainly I wrote news and commercials. Didn't do a lot. I did some voice work during the summer. I'd run up to the station in Ashtabula and do a shift of news.
How was the pay at the stations?
Let's see. As I recall, minimum wage went up to $1 during those years.
And what did you do with your earnings? Did you save them at all?
Yeah, I saved. The sisters that taught us in elementary school gave us a formula that I'm still using about how to manage money. First tenth goes to God, second tenth goes to savings, and if you can't live on 80%, you're spending too much.
That sounds like a good formula.
It works.
All right, after graduation from Kirtland, then what did you do?
Okay, I had intentions of continuing in media of some sort, but I thought I knew I needed a backup, so decided civil engineering. I've been a model railroader for a very long time. Even then, I'd been at it for a few years, so civil engineering made sense.
Well, when did you start model railroading?
Oh, yeah, let's see. Probably about 1960.
All right.
So.
And Was it somewhat of a problem moving your model railroading from one home to another as you were moving?
I have more pieces and parts of stuff. The Lutheran Church runs a place like this in Columbus. One of the layouts is there. There's a whole bunch of stuff when I left Kirtland that I put in the Railroad Museum in Conneaut. It's still there. I went to see it. I was prepared to be embarrassed, but it looked pretty good.
All right,
still.
Good.
So yeah, I've been at that a very long time.
So where'd you undertake your civil engineering
The civil
education?
engineering at Tri-State College.
Which is where?
In Angola, Indiana. It's now a university, I understand. But General Lewis B. Hershey, who was heading up the draft, was an alumnus of Tri-State. He'd show up, we'd all leave town.
So, did you live on campus?
Yeah, I lived on campus. That only lasted a quarter. The folks ran out of money. I moved back to Cleveland and got a day job and went to Cleveland State at night.
What was your day job?
I went to a couple of different places. I worked a steel fabricator. I was designing steel mill pulpits and crane cabs. And that, I'd done well in industrial arts in high school, so that made sense. And then I got a better offer from Bunker Ramo Corporation. They made numerical controls for machine tools.
Okay.
So I was there, I was designing printed circuit boards and writing tech manuals.
And did you work those two jobs through your stint there at Cleveland State?
Right, yeah.
And then when did you graduate from Cleveland State?
I didn't graduate from Cleveland State.
Oh.
I was two courses short when my 2S ran out.
And your 2S was your deferment?
Student deferment. It was only good for 4 years. And those of us who were already in the system when the draft lottery started kept the number we had in the first lottery.
Do you remember your number?
It was 70-something, and they were drafting into the 200s that year. So I knew what was coming.
So what did you do?
I stopped off at the recruiting office between work and school.
Where?
This was still in Cleveland. And had a really good recruiter. There's a lot of horror stories about recruiters, but this guy was good. And he says, well, you have a skill. He says, ask, and when you get down to basic training, ask for a bypass specialist test, which I did.
And what was the bypass specialist?
Bypass specialist was if you had a skill, the government could save money sending you to tech school, and they'd plug you into whatever military position coincided with one's experience.
Where did you have to report? You go to the Cleveland recruiting office. And
yeah, downtown at the Federal Building in Cleveland, and that was. I was already married and had a child by that time, and we went down and were sworn in, and my in-laws looked after our daughter, and my wife came down and witnessed that, and she rode the rapid transit out to Cleveland Hopkins with us as we flew off to Lackland Air Force Base.
Is in Texas?
In Texas.
And what did you do at Lackland, and how long were you there?
Well, basic in those days was 6 weeks long, because they were pushing a lot of us through at that point in 1970. And
what did you do during basic?
what do you do during basic? You fold your clothes, you make your bed, you...
But you didn't get any special classification?
Oh, no, because everybody who made a certain score, and I don't remember what the score was, in the general portion of the AFQT, the Armed Forces Qualifying Test, was automatically signed up to take a language aptitude test. So I was signed up to take a language aptitude test. Well, I don't necessarily know much, except I do know how to take a test. I take it as a challenge. And I wound up in the 96th percentile of language aptitude, and so they came in and said, Airman Campbell, report to such and such a building. And so we did.
All right.
And the civil service worker there said, well, you did very well on the test. Yes, thank you. And he says, we'd like to send you to language school. I said, what language? He says, we have openings in Russian and in Vietnamese. And I said, well, I know where I would be stationed if I learned Vietnamese. How about Russian? He says, that school is 13 weeks at Schenectady, and where would it be stationed? Oh, well, probably Germany, could be up on the DU line or NORAD. And I said, well, that sounds interesting. He says, oh, I'm sorry, all of those slots are filled now. But here, sign here, and 51 weeks in beautiful Monterey, California, and you can learn to speak Vietnamese. And I said, no, thank you. And he says, but Airman Campbell, he says, it's your patriotic duty to use your talents for your country. And I said, I have other talents my country can use. I have a patriotic duty to keep my ass in one piece and not make a widow out of my wife and an orphan out of my daughter. Thank you very much.
What happened after that then?
I went and took the bypass specialist test and got a directed duty assignment after basic to Chanute Air Force Base in Illinois. It's a training base.
And what were they training you to do?
Well, let's see. Chanute had the fire school, the Minuteman Missile School. We had avionics. We had the parachute packing school there.
So did you do all of those?
Oh, I didn't. I just illustrated the educational materials in the tech school. So a year or so in the daily bulletin on base, there was a notice that they needed cross trainees for information specialist. And that was my original career goal, so I seized the opportunity and cross-trained into information.
And where was that training? Still at Chanute?
Well, the training was correspondence. The J school for military was over by Indianapolis. I'm trying to remember the name of the Army fort, just east of, it's decommissioned now too. Can't think of the name of the base.
So you were still at Chanute?
Yeah, still at Chanute.
But you're doing this?
All 4 years I flew my desk at Chanute Air Force Base, or a desk.
Pausing.
So all 4 years you're at Chanute. What was your rank when you went to Chanute, and what was your rank when you got out?
Well, I was just a buck airman, one striper when I went, and I was an E5 when I left. I had a line number for E6, but Nixon's promotion freeze meant I didn't get that next stripe to become a tech sergeant before I got out.
All right, so you, according to your little bioform here, your service dates with the U.S. Air Force with May 6, 1970 to March 1, 74. And there's another date here, 31 March 76. You were in the reserves?
Reserves.
How long?
Yeah, the standard contract was 4 years active and 2 years reserve. Inactive reserve.
So let me ask you a little bit about your wife. When did you? First of all, what's her name?
Well, my first wife, name was Diane Thompson, and we were married in '68.
Where were you married?
In Kirtland. We were classmates in high school.
Okay. And did you and Diane have that one child?
We have two.
Had two?
Have two, daughter and a son.
What is your daughter's name?
Oh, Heather. And son's name is Matthew.
How old is Heather?
He's born in 1969, so I'm not as good doing math in my head anymore.
55?
55 this year, yeah.
And
then Matt's 2 years younger.
okay.
He was born at Chanute, at the regional hospital out there.
While you were at Chanute, where did you live? Where did you and the family live?
Well, when we first went out, we had a camping trailer that we took out with us, and we stayed in that for a while. And there was a farmer about 5 miles out of Rantoul that rented out spaces to people who came in for the tech school. And he had some trailers that were permanently there, and other people would come in for a short school and bring RVs. So we set up there, and then we rented from him, and then one of the other people on base sold a trailer, and we bought that and lived in the trailer. And then the winds in central Illinois on the plains do interesting things to trailers. And through some contacts at church, we finally got a place in Rankin, Illinois, which is about 15 miles from the base, but it was attached to the ground, and we rented that. And then they wanted to move permanent party personnel on base, so they put us in Weary housing. It's these were townhouses, 2-bedroom townhouses on base.
Okay. And how long in the 4 years were you in the townhouse on base?
In Weary, dreary Weary, we were there about 2 years.
What was your average day like there at Chanute? How many hours were you doing your military work, and what else did you do in your free time?
Well, unless there were extra duties to be done, a work day, tech school, or at the newspaper in the Office of Information, that was a pretty much 8-hour-a-day job. So get up, and one of the nice things about military, I have to decide what to wear. Am I going to wear my blue suit today or my blue suit today? It was a Class A job. And nice social life on base amongst the neighbors in the neighborhood. We were active in a church there.
What church did you belong to?
That was First Baptist, American Baptist congregation in town.
So you had Diane and Heather and Matthew with you there. Did she have any kind of a job outside the home?
No, not at that point. Not at that point.
All right. When you leave Chanute, where did you go?
Well, when I mustered out, we came back to Ohio, and I had gotten a job at the Chillicothe, Ohio Gazette as they wanted a staff artist. So I was hired for that, and I carried half an account load selling newspaper advertising in Chillicothe.
Well, how did you get wind of the need for somebody in the Chillicothe Gazette?
They didn't. They didn't know they had a need until I told them they had. That's where we wanted to move.
Oh, okay.
So
What was
I
the
sold
attraction?
it. I sold it.
What was the attraction for Chillicothe?
I had been there. I had done some work along with the model railroading. I had edited regional newspaper for the National Model Railroad Association, and we had a convention in Chillicothe. Just liked the feel of it, liked the town, and decided that's where we'd like to settle.
Well, being from Ohio, I've been by Chillicothe and in Chillicothe, and at that time was Mead Paper Companies.
Mead
over
was,
there?
yeah, the smell of money.
The aroma
Yes.
of the newspaper.
The aroma of paper
Wow.
making is quite interesting. But Kenworth had just announced that they were building in Chillicothe at the time, and that was a big boost for the paper because the area was growing and they needed someone to do spec ads and support
Okay.
the other ad salesmen. And
Okay.
yeah, it was a fascinating place. The newspaper it's the oldest continuously published newspaper west of the Allegheny Mountains.
And it's still in business?
They're still in business, not printed there anymore, more's the pity. Yeah, it's in a replica, housed in a replica of the first state capitol.
Well, since you were interested in newspaper and publishing while you lived in Lebanon, were you aware of the Western Star?
Knew the Western Star well, yeah.
That's no longer being printed, but that was a long time newspaper, was it not, in Lebanon?
Yes, it was. It was. That's another whole. The state of newspapering is a whole other subject.
Well, how long were you in Chillicothe then?
2 years.
Okay.
2 years there, and that's where we became acquainted with the Lutheran Church. We had been looking for a church home, and we were invited there, and I discovered that all of my life I was congenitally Lutheran. I wasn't really a Roman Catholic after all.
Okay, you'd been born Catholic?
Yeah.
Mom and dad were Catholics?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's why you went to a Catholic grade school there?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we got invited and just felt at home, and a call that I had felt to the ministry came back. And so
And what did you do in answering that call?
off I went to seminary at Hamma School of Theology at Wittenberg in Springfield.
Springfield, Ohio? Mm-hmm. And how long did you go to Wittenberg?
Until it closed, until the seminary was consolidated into Trinity Seminary. The seminary at Capital University and ours became one seminary, Trinity, over at Capital. And so I, again, commuted from Springfield because by that time my wife did have a job, and the kids were both in school in Springfield.
What was your job while you were going to Trinity?
Well, that's how I used my GI Bill, was to go to grad school.
Okay.
And I did some freelance advertising work for, actually one of the former clients kept me on to do some freelance advertising, and I did stuff for the seminary as well.
Good. Now, Campbell University was over in Bexley on the east side of downtown Columbus.
Yeah, I never moved there. I just attended a few classes
But you commuted.
Commuted,
About
yeah.
how many miles was that commute? 40 or 50 miles?
Took us about an hour. So yeah, 40, 50 miles. Remember looking at an old interurban streetcar schedule from the 30s. The streetcar would have gotten us from Springfield to Columbus faster than we could drive it on Route 40, or on Route 70 rather.
When did you graduate from Trinity?
1979 I finished.
And where did your career take you from Trinity?
Yeah, I finished early because I was one of the last two older men for the ministry. They had a program, and another Air Force veteran and I were old men for the ministry. And so they cut us a little slack about doubling up on classes and things. So I finished early and received a call to extreme northwest Ohio, 2 Point Parish, one in Williams County, Stryker and West Jefferson. There are two West Jeffersons in Ohio, by the way.
Okay. One is west of Columbus, and this other one is way up in the northwest.
Yeah, it's a suburb of Montpelier.
Yeah.
Little country church.
So I see that, are you currently married?
Yes, yes.
And your current wife is named?
His name is Darlene.
Okay, and
Darlene was the bishop's secretary.
okay.
And when my first marriage ended, I went to counseling, and I finished up the counseling, and I didn't want to eat another meal alone. So I stopped by the synod office and said, "Who wants to go to lunch?" So that's how we got acquainted.
And her maiden name, Darlene's maiden?
She was a Davis.
Okay, and you guys got married September 6th of 87?
87. I'll be 37 years this year.
Did Darlene have any children?
Darlene has two children. Her son's name is Matthew. This is my son Matt, and this is my other son Matt.
Okay.
And her daughter is Lori. And Lori's birthday is September 21st. Heather's birthday is September 22nd. And the boys are October 19th and November 19th, respectively.
So they're, all four of them are close to each other.
All close together.
Yeah. And Lori's last name is Rodenhauser?
Rodenhauser, yes. She lives here in Wilmington now.
Rodenhauser is Rodenhauser.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and Matthew's last name is?
Burnett.
Burnette.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. On this is mentioned the Board of Governors, state colleges, and University of
Yes,
Illinois.
yeah. Well, we never did finish up college, did we? I was two courses shy of graduating at Cleveland State when Uncle Sam got his hooks into me. While I was at Chanute, working at the tech school, we accredited the Community College of the Air Force.
Okay.
And we contracted with Eastern Illinois University out of Charleston for arts classes. We had the tech courses, and they brought on the arts classes. And I saw that as a chance to finish up my bachelor's. So I put together a portfolio, took several courses on base, and submitted it all to the Illinois Board of Governors, and they granted me a Bachelor of Arts. So I have a real dog's dinner of a college education.
So you've got a Bachelor of Arts, you've got a Master of Divinity.
Master of Divinity.
Any other college awards or certificates?
No, that was enough. I toyed with the idea of going on for a doctorate, but by that time I was just too old to make it, for it to make sense.
How long were you up in Williams County?
I was up there for about 5 years, and then I was called down to Columbus to take over a mission congregation and get a first unit building built. That was Fellowship on Sawmill Road. And from there, now this was when Darlene and I got married. We stayed in that congregation for a year. And then I was called up to Anna, Ohio.
Anna?
Anna.
Okay.
The earthquake capital of Ohio. It's halfway between Cincinnati and Toledo on I-75.
And isn't there an automotive parts plant there?
Yeah, they were building, Honda was building there then. It was the engine plant.
A rather small town, though.
Very small town.
And how big was your church?
600.
600?
600 members in a 700 population town.
Wow. How long were you there in Anna?
I was there 3 years. It was a term call. It was meant to be short and transitional. They had just come off a long pastorate. And then I was called down to senior pastorate in Dayton at Trinity on North Main, and I was there 10 years as senior pastor.
Where'd you live when you were in Dayton?
Well, that's an interesting story in itself. We bought a house from the FBI. It was a couple doors down from Pete Rose's bookie's house. And the FBI had an agent stationed there, and when the bookie died, the agent went away, and we bought the house. So it was right behind Good Samaritan Hospital.
Okay, out on the north side. Where'd you live in Anna? Did you live in town or out of town?
Anna had a parsonage, and we lived in a parsonage there. Same was true of Stryker. That was a parsonage. And Fellowship had a parsonage, and when we built the building, it made more economic sense to give me a housing allowance, so we bought a house on Olentangy River Road.
Okay.
in Columbus. So then, after 10 years in Dayton, I thought I might have one more call in me, and I was getting a little long in the tooth, and it was harder for older pastors to get calls. But there was one more church to build, and that was Hillsboro. And so we moved there, bought a house, and that's where the second part of my military career started.
Well, tell me about that. What year is this that you're going to Hillsboro?
Hillsboro was 2001, or 2002 we started in Hillsboro.
All right, well, tell me what's going on now.
Okay, we started a weekly prayer breakfast at a restaurant downtown in Hillsboro. And one of my members was a retired lieutenant colonel, Air Force lieutenant colonel.
Remember his name?
Bob Skoog, God rest his soul.
Bob what?
Skoog, S-K-O-O-G.
Okay.
Good Scandinavian name. And Bob came to the prayer breakfast, and one morning he says, you know, this county needs a Civil Air Patrol squadron. And he says, Pastor, I want you to be the chaplain. And I figured, okay, because I was already chaplain to the Pilots Association out at the airport. And I figured, okay, you're going to be like the Boy Scouts or something. And come to find out that other people join Civil Air Patrol. Chaplains joined the Civil Air Patrol chaplain service, and we had to be endorsed and vetted and appointed like regular military chaplains. So went through all of that. And the Secretary of Defense can use chaplains any place but combat.
All right.
So I wound up being chaplain to the squadron, and we enlisted a whole bunch of cadets and some adult members.
Now, where was the squadron located?
At Highland County Airport. So that was a brand new squadron, and I got bumped up to group chaplain, and then when I made major, I was invited to become the deputy wing chaplain. So that meant that I was working out of DESI in Columbus.
So your rank was a major?
Major. Mm-hmm.
Was that the highest rank that you achieved?
That was it. The ceiling would have been light colonel, but after 6 years, and I was already retired by that time, it was just time to hang it up.
All right. Now DESI is DESC, Defense Electronic Supply Center.
Mm-hmm.
That had been
In Dayton.
in Kettering, but they moved to Columbus.
Yeah, it was there on Wilmington Road,
Yeah.
across from the old WHIO studios.
Right. So when did you actually retire then?
Retire from from ministry, 2009. That was my 30 years. So
And where were you living at the time you retired? Were you living in Columbus?
in Hillsborough.
Hillsborough.
Yeah.
Now, we're here in Wilmington. How long have you been here in Wilmington?
15 years. We like the area, like the people. Had to get out of Hillsborough when there's only one church of your denomination. Got to get out of town. So we just moved up the road to Wilmington.
Okay.
We got some roots here. My second great-grandfather moved here when they threw us out of Scotland. The 1824, he was a carpenter in Clarksville.
Okay. Clarksville is
That's
is that Clinton County?
That's Clinton County.
Okay.
And he had a son, Americus Griffith Campbell, who was born in Wilmington in 18 oh nuts. Let me look. 1842. Couldn't remember, it was 40. Because my great-grandfather was born in Sabina in 1861. I tend to get those two mixed up. But Andrew and Americus Campbell both enlisted in the Civil War together. 79th OVI, that was Sherman in Georgia.
Okay. And did they survive?
Yeah. Andrew is buried at Blanchester at the IOOF Cemetery, International Order of Odd Fellows. And it took us a while. We found his grave. And I was still doing cap chaplaincy then, and I volunteered to do the Memorial Day address there one year. So I got to speak from my great-great-grandfather's graveside.
Oh.
So, yeah, Americus, I presume Andrew did well enough after the war, but Americus, I think, suffered from PTSD because as nearly as we can tell, he never did hold down a job after that. He traveled between among his children, And my grandfather would tell stories about him reminiscing about the Civil War, but never any kind of a trade mentioned.
Well, it's too bad that they didn't have the technology that they could do back then, what we're doing now, so that stories are retained.
It's much better now for everybody that suffers from that.
So how long have you been here at
Cape May,
living?
2 years.
Where did you live in Wilmington before that?
On the other side of town,
Okay.
just 2 miles away.
So how's your health now?
Mine's doing pretty well. I inherited some real interesting cardiovascular issues from the Campbell side of the family, but I think I'm going to beat them.
And Darlene?
Darlene's, she's having more severe issues than I. She's
sorry to hear that.
yeah.
Besides your railroading, your model railroading, what other hobbies, if any, did you have?
Well, I've drawn a lot and written a lot, and I started doing memoirs mainly for the grandchildren, but also for myself, because I figured the day would come I would be somewhere like this, and my memory would need a nudge now and then.
And what are we holding up here?
That's
On the table.
the war stories. That was my collection of stories. You put two veterans together, and there will be war stories. Nothing horrible, just all the silly things that happen.
How long did it take you to compile all this?
Writers talk about oral diarrhea, and just sit down and write. I don't put a clock on it. People ask, how long did it take to build that model, or how much did it cost? And I said, it's a hobby. I do it for fun. I don't have to punch a time clock for it, so I couldn't tell you.
So, is there any reason why you picked the Air Force as opposed to any other branch of the military?
Yeah, Dad went into World War II in the cadet.
Pausing tape.
You were telling us about your father?
Yeah, Dad had gone into World War II in the cadet program, which was run by Civil Air Patrol. After World War I, the Army Signal Corps sold off most of the planes and riffed most of the flyers, including instructor pilots. And so CAP began December 1st, 1941, and they were training all of our pilots to get back up to strength. And that Dad went in under that program as an aviation cadet. And
where was he?
yeah, well, the training that he went to was in Maxwell, Alabama, which is where CAP is still headquartered, at Maxwell. And what's left of the Air Training Command is out of Maxwell now instead of out of Lackland, or Randolph was the headquarters. So so he flew Border Patrol in Florida. My first father-in-law was also USAAC, and he was a mechanic with Claire Chenault's outfit in Australia during the war. And my grandfather in 1918 got the flu, and that kept him out, but his brothers went in
World War
I.
I.
Yeah.
Army?
Army, well, it was all Army then, and one was a flyer. One of the, what would that be, great uncle or great great uncles was a flyer. So,
Who's that young man?
The one with the hair, that was, I think at that point I was airman first class.
And then a little bit later,
Yeah.
do we have the same fella?
Yeah, what 40, 50 years will do to a person.
Now, we've talked about a lot of things about you and the family and your career. Is there anything that you think we've left out that someone watching and listening to this might be interested in knowing?
Well, I've done, especially in chaplaincy, done a lot of work with veterans and with the Air Force. Another one of their cost-saving things, they've riffed all but the number of chaplains they need to handle overseas. And so I've picked up way too many funerals, more than I ever thought. And it was 25 years after I mustered out of the regulars before someone thanked me for my service, which is okay. No one was ever nasty, it just wasn't talked about. And then finally I had a parishioner who'd had a favorite uncle who was a Vietnam era vet, and he had had serious problems after getting out. And she was the one who first one to thank me for my service.
Okay.
I'm very happy that we've come to the place now where we don't blame troops for the missteps of politicians.
Yeah, which is a real blessing.
Mm-hmm.
How do you make contact with the veterans' families for services?
Well, usually they would get the funeral directors, if they have a military funeral, will contact me, and I would do those. I had one this past winter where I had the honor guard from Wright Pat again. The first military funeral I did, I got a call from the chaplains at Wright Pat, or from the office. Their chaplains were all TDY somewhere, temporary duty assignment somewhere, and they needed someone to do the chaplain's duty with the honor guard. So I got called for that directly from the base, but. Well, usually it's the funeral directors.
That's quite a nice service you perform. The families need that kind of closure.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
Tom, is there anything you'd like to ask? Okay. Well, thank you for this interview.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service. I'll be the second one to thank you.
Oh, it's happened more than. As a matter of fact, this morning I had to go pick up some papers at the dentist's office, and the young woman behind the desk thanked me for my service.
Yeah, it's unfortunate the way the Vietnam veterans were treated when they came back.
Mm-hmm. My brother-in-law had a couple of unhappy incidents after he got back.
Well, tell me about that. What was he in?
He was in the Air Force as well.
Over in Nam?
He was in Thailand.
We weren't in Thailand.
We weren't in Thailand, but he was in Thailand. And he was part of the Cambodian incursion that happened when I was in basic training too. No, he had gotten some bad reactions traveling in uniform after he came back, and he doesn't talk about that much either.
Well, what was he? Was he a pilot? Or
no, he was security police.
Okay.
The difference between a security policeman and a Boy Scout, they let the Boy Scouts carry knives. We used to joke about that.
So is he still with us?
Oh yes, yeah, yeah. We get together periodically.
Pass my congratulations and thanks on to him also.
Will do.